John Wooden, the legendary UCLA basketball coach who has won more Division I NCAA championships than anyone else, once said, quote, "Do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do," end quote. It takes teamwork to win 10 championships. I rise today to recognize the remarkable teamwork, championship-level teamwork, that we are seeing back home in Montana during these floods. This is the third time I've come to the Senate floor to share stories about the remarkable actions taken by regular folks across Montana. Their teamwork is making a huge difference. John Wooden would have been proud to coach this team. This is a championship team. And we need this kind of teamwork. Flooding continues to damage property and disrupt lives across Montana. The President has issued a major disaster declaration. Warm weather threatens to unlock water stored in record levels of mountain snowpack. I've never seen anything like this. The old-timers at home have never seen anything like this. So much snow, yet melting so quickly, along with a lot of rain. The chart to my left is part of, anyway, Wolf Point, Montana. Wolf Point sits along the mighty Missouri River on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation. Floodwaters hit hard, hit fast, forcing 40 families from their homes, many still unable to return. Darren Falcon, pictured here, is the director of the Roads Department. He has used his expertise as an engineer to help his neighbors on projects of every scale. He constructed berms and dikes to prevent floodwaters from damaging more homes. He delivered sandbags to residents to protect major public infrastructure. In one instance, an elderly neighbor was stranded. 300 feet of roadway around his home was underwater. Falcon got right to work, helped build a new road so his neighbor could spend that night at home. Falcon's work ethic and willingness to help make him a real Montana hero is something to observe. The Milk River has been dumping water into Glasgow for weeks. Floods have washed out roads and damaged bridges all across Valley County. County Road Supervisor Rick Sealer and Wayne Warwick have worked endless hours to keep roads open and residents safe after the Milk River burst its banks. In a crisis like this, roads are lifelines. Roads mean access to a doctor. Roads mean groceries, fresh water. And Rick and Wayne, teaming up with the whole Valley County road crew, went above and beyond to keep these vital lifelines open. Meanwhile, across town, Tanya Franson, a meteorologist for the National Weather Service, was taking extraordinary steps to help her friends and her neighbors. This is Tanya. She never abandoned her post. She served as the voice of the National Weather Service across northeastern Montana. Tanya knew her neighbors. She knew they depended on her for the latest weather reports. And beyond that, of all things, Tanya, despite a broken leg and a cast, spent hours filling sandbags to protect homes along Cherry Creek. Tanya went above and beyond the call of duty to make sure her friends and neighbors were equipped with the information they needed to stay safe throughout the disaster. Tanya, I might say to you, take some time out and let that broken leg heal. Tanya asked that the entire team at the National Weather Service in Glasgow be recognized. That's just how generous she is. She doesn't want recognition herself. It's her team. And working together, they helped Glasgow weather these difficult floods. In Billings, Montana, floods have left dozens of families without homes. In a normal week, Jeff Rosenberry spends his time as the Assistant Director for Housing and Student Life. He makes sure students at MSU Billings have a safe and comfortable place to stay during the school year. This month, Jeff had extra work he very much enjoyed doing. Jeff stepped up to the plate. He converted a residence hall into a home away from home for displaced families. I saw it. Very impressed. Jeff worked 15-hour days to make sure everyone felt welcome. He delivered food. He delivered water to hungry families. He also made sure everyone had the latest information about the floods. Ask anyone on the team helping these families, and they'll tell you Jeff was the team captain. His hard work, his generosity will long be remembered. The families who needed a place to sleep, of course, never forget Jeff. in his efforts. Finally, the teamwork between our local disaster and emergency services coordinators and crews has been extraordinary. DES coordinators are the go-to leaders to help their communities respond to and recover from floods. They are the first to be called to help and the last to leave. Montana's disaster and emergency services teams have been working nonstop. They are a model of public service. I hope Montanans everywhere will reach out, shake their hand, email, write a letter to thank these heroes for their service. These remarkable Montanans remind us that sometimes it's all about teamwork. We're the strongest when we work together, and I'm proud of these stories. I'm asking Montanans to share their stories of ordinary folks doing extraordinary things for their friends and neighbors, whether on Facebook, if I call my office, whatever works. We want to hear these inspiring stories because we want to help bring Montanans even closer together in showing that we are working together. Someone once observed, Mr. President, Montana's a big state, big in geography, not a lot of people. Montana's really one big, small town. We kind of know each other. About 1 or 2 degrees of separation, we know each other. And we're there to help each other out. Spread out in space, but certainly together in spirit. And in closing, I want to share a humble thank you for all Montana's heroes back home. I don't know what we'd do without you. Thank you so much for your service. Mr. President, I yield the floor and suggest the House quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
pleased to have a chance here to talk about the work that I think we should be doing this week and surely will do in the weeks to come. We are really discussing who we're going to be as a country. What model are we going to follow? Are we going to continue to be a country that believes that we need to help create opportunity? Or are we going to be a country that believes that the government needs to continue to accept more and more of the challenges of life? Our debt today, Mr. President, is over $14 trillion, and apparently that's not enough. And so every discussion in Washington, including some that you're in, are focusing around the idea of how do we get even more ability to borrow more money so we can pay off the money we've already borrowed. There are 13 million Americans out of work today looking for a job, and we continue during that process to spend money we don't have for things we don't have to have. I think we ought to be focused totally on two things domestically right now. At the top of every list should be, what do we do to create more private sector jobs, and how do we get federal spending under control? Now, the federal government doesn't create private sector jobs in very many instances. There are occasions with a public works project where, by the way, if we're going to have something that we're paying for 30 years, I'd hope we're investing in something that would last for 30 years. But most of what the federal government can do that impacts jobs is create an atmosphere that takes all the uncertainty out of that decision-making process that government can. There are enough risk in creating jobs without having the additional risk of how fast can the utility bill go up, how high are the taxes going to be, what new unknown regulations are you going to have to deal with. And frankly, those are the wrong messages in all three of those areas right now if you hope to be focused on that idea of how do we create jobs for those 13 million Americans that are looking for jobs and better jobs for the Americans that have jobs. What are we doing to encourage private sector job creation for the future? In spending, we're now spending at the federal level almost $1 out of $4. Right at $1 out of every $4 that the economy can create in goods and services. The number for 40 years ending in 2008 was $1 out of $5. And there's a lot of difference in an economy. Who competes for that dollar that the federal government's now spending that for 40 years was available for somebody else to get their hands on and use to create opportunity for somebody else? We've got to get that under control. The co-chairs of the President's own fiscal commission say that we're looking at the most predictable economic crisis in the history of the country. There is a train moving down a track to a destination that nobody wants to go, and it continues to move at that same speed. It is totally predictable. It is something we have to do something about, and we can't continue to spend somewhere between $3.7 and $3.8 trillion in this spending year and collect $2.2 trillion. And I've said on this floor before that I'm not sure anybody really has a good grasp of what $3.8 trillion is, but we do know if you're making $22,000 and you're spending $38,000 and you've already borrowed all the money anybody really should have ever loaned you, you've got a problem that you can't deal with for very long without changing behavior. I think that behavior has to change. It has to change in ways that look at the programs that we, up till now, have just been able to define who benefits from the program without any real controls over how that money's spent. We've got this year the $2.2 trillion I mentioned that the federal government collected. That all was spent by the programs that we normally don't even appropriate money for because we've defined who gets that money. And for the first time ever, those programs exceeded all the money that came in. Most of those programs are, of course, the big programs that we want to be sure are there as safety nets for people who have been told they need to rely on them. I think about 80% of that side of the budget is Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. We need to see what we do so those programs continue to work. But if all of that side of the budget spent all of the money, That means every other penny the federal government spent for an air traffic controller, for somebody to open the gates to a national park, sadly, for somebody to put on a military uniform, or to put a gallon of jet fuel in a plane, or to buy a gallon of paint for a ship, that was all done with borrowed money. We are defending the country on borrowed money. The number one obligation of the federal government is just that. And we've got to figure out what we do that structurally begins to define how we spend the money that comes in, and we don't spend more money that comes in. That's why, Mr. President, I'm supporting the balanced budget amendment. I think we need to spend a lot of July talking about what we do to get this budget back in balance, how long it takes, and I look forward to that debate being the principal debate of the next month, and I would yield my time back.
Mr. President.
Senator from California.
Mr. President, I've been listening very carefully to my friend's remarks about what we have to do, what's in front of us, and his push, as he is speaking for the Republican Party, for a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. Well, let me say this. I want a balanced budget. That's what I want. And I don't need an amendment to the Constitution to get me to vote for a balanced budget. What I want to do is for all the sides to come together, that's what I want, and write a balanced budget. And do it in a way that's responsible, and do it in a way that is fair, and do it in a way that protects our middle class, protects our kids, and stimulates economic growth by making smart investments and cutting out spending in areas where we really don't need it. So all this yak about a balanced budget amendment, and I call it that, and I apologize if it sounds like it's a derogatory term, it's just so much talk. Let's get to it. And I think what we ought to do is go back to the people and the party that was the only party and the only people to balance the budget in 40 years. And I hate to break it to my Republican friends, but it's the Democratic Party. We're the ones who did it. We did it when Bill Clinton came into office. We did it after hard work. We did it after painful cuts. We did it with smart investments. We did it with everybody paying their fair share. And we didn't need a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution to do it. It's a gimmick. We need a balanced budget, not a balanced budget amendment. So let's go and look at what we did the last time this country ever had a balanced budget. And lucky for us, it wasn't that long ago, and lucky for us, a lot of us are still here who made that fateful vote. We didn't have one Republican voting for that budget. And when they came to the floor, I have all the quotes, chapter and verse. They said, "This is horrible. It will never balance the budget. This is going to lead to a depression. This is the worst thing in history." You know what happened? We not only balanced the budget, but we had a surplus. We not only had a surplus, but the debt was going down so fast that we thought we would never have to have Treasury bonds again. And on top of that, we created 23 million jobs. So I hope the public understands, when they hear Republican colleague after Republican colleague come down to the floor and say, we need to stay in all through July, fine with me. I'll stay here through August. I'll spend the night in the cloakroom. I don't care. Let's not talk about a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. Let's talk about doing the hard work of balancing the budget. And the way you do it, again, is to follow the lead of the plan that was laid out by President Clinton and worked in the most amazing way beyond our greatest expectations. What do? We looked at this deficit and we said, this is unacceptable. And we went after programs that made no sense and we cut them. We either eliminated them or we cut them back. Then we said, what are some investments we could make that would actually stimulate growth in the private sector? And my friend Senator Blunt, I thought, was right. That's what we need to do. We need to stimulate growth in the private sector. And at that time, the investments were in the high-tech side, high-tech biotech. Today, clearly it's clean energy. That's what the whole world wants. That's where we ought to be leading. That's what our president knows. So you cut out programs that don't make sense. You invest where it makes sense to create jobs. And then guess what you do? You make sure you have enough revenues coming in to pay for your priorities. And I got news from my Republican friends. It's not that hard. Go after the billionaires. You can't get yourself to do it, can you? The billionaires and the millionaires, the people who aren't paying what they should be paying. But when the House had its chance, Mr. President, what did it do? It allowed the biggest tax breaks ever to continue for the billionaires and the millionaires, and they killed Medicare. Medicare is gone. It's becoming some kind of a voucher program where you can imagine some 90-year-old woman who is suffering from disease has to now go out and try to find out where she can buy an insurance plan. Tell me who's going to cover her, A, and B, tell me if she has the strength to do that, and C, her Medicare benefit no longer goes to her. Guess what? It goes right to the insurance company. That's the plan the Republicans passed in the House. And they cut everything that's near and dear to the hearts of the American people. In addition to Medicare, they cut education. They cut funding for clean air, clean water. Highways, they cut by a third. And here they talk about jobs on the other side, private sector jobs. The highway bill creates thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs in the private sector. They cut that bill by 36%. So when you hear my Republican friends talk about the importance of balancing the budget, and they're talking for a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, why don't you ask them, show us your balanced budget? Because the one they showed us from the House was such a disaster that they lost a congressional seat they'd held for eternity. It's easy to talk about a balanced budget amendment. It's harder to balance the budget in a fair way, and that's what we have to do. Now, my friend Senator Blunt also talked about the importance of jobs. He's so right. I just ran for re-election. Jobs, 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 the top three issues. Guess what? My Republican friends have filibustered every single jobs bill we've brought to the floor. The last one, really, I'm very familiar with because it was a bill that came out of my committee. The whole committee voted with one dissenting vote for the Economic Development Administration. It gives seed money to areas in the country that need job creation. It attracts $7 of funds for every dollar of federal money. It would have created 1 million jobs over 5 years. Oh, they filibustered it. They added amendments like about the prairie chicken. They added amendments about things that had nothing to do with it, just to bring it down. They didn't even have, what is the word I'm looking for? They didn't even speak against it when they voted against it at the end of the day. They didn't even come to the floor because they had nothing to say. Because it's a jobs bill, because it's passed every Congress since the 1960s, because the last time it passed without a dissenting vote in the Senate in 2004, because the last president who signed it was George W. Bush. It's a jobs bill. They said no. Why? I go back to what their leader said here. His top priority, beating President Barack Obama. So you have to figure they're bringing every jobs bill down so that this economy gets worse. Well, let me tell you, it's not going to go down easy at home. It's not going to go down easy at home. They killed a bill that Mary Landrieu brought here, was brought out of her committee unanimously. Small business bill. It would have created thousands of small businesses. They voted it down. That bill was written by Warren Rudman, a Republican senator. They voted it down. They filibustered it and voted it down. Why? They say jobs are their top priority. Why would they vote down a bill that was written by a Republican, that is passed without objection year after year after year? Why would they vote down another bill that was last signed by George W. Bush without a dissenting vote in the Senate? Why? 2 jobs bills. Why? You have to ask yourself, why? Maybe they really are willing to sacrifice jobs for political reasons. That's all I can come up with. I put that together with what Mitch McConnell said. Now their big push is a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. A lot of talk. Balance the budget, folks. We know how to do it. End the wars. That's $1 trillion over 10 years. Go after the millionaires and the billionaires who don't pay their fair share. That's another $1 trillion over 10 years. There's $2 trillion right there. Go after the people who never pay their taxes. Go after the oil companies who are ripping us off at the pump and taking the highest profits ever. It's not hard to do. And yes, we're willing to cut some things that don't make sense. You get a $4 trillion package pretty easily if you're willing to really look at it in a fair way. I heard our president today speaking to the nation through a press conference, and he was just very sweet about this issue. I was saying to Senator Durbin, as I watched him, he's explaining it to the people. Everybody has to give up something. You want bipartisanship? That doesn't mean you get what you want and I get nothing. It means I give up some of the things I want and you give up some of the things you want. But we have declarations by the Republicans. We will never, ever, ever agree to any new revenues. Why? You just voted to eliminate the ethanol subsidy. That brings revenues. So why would you not take that to the table? How can you believe it is fair that billionaires sometimes pay less in terms of an effective tax rate than a secretary or a teacher or a nurse? Come on, come to the table. Don't come to the table with a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. That doesn't do anything to balance the budget. It's a lot of talk. Balance the budget. Put a little faith in the people who know how to do it, who did it before. I was proud to vote to balance the budget. I was proud to vote for a fair budget. I was proud to be here when we saw 23 million jobs come. That didn't happen because we just said cut, 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 end Medicare as we know it. It came because we were willing to look at what was working, what wasn't working, where to make the investments, where to make the cuts. You've got to come to the table with everything on it. You've got to say that you're willing to listen to the other side. And we need a fair plan, and we have that as Democrats. We're not going to end Medicare. We're not going to hurt working people. We're going to do this in a fair way. So I hope the American people will put together and connect all the dots. You have a Republican leader who has said on more than one occasion the most important thing is to defeat Barack Obama. You have a Republican Party that says it's for jobs and filibusters every single jobs bill that in the past they have broadly supported. You have Republicans walking out on the vice president, taking their little teddy bear and their blankie and walking out of the negotiations because they didn't like the way the discussions were going. They walked out. And then my friends from the other side, and I thought Senator Blunt was very eloquent on the point, he says two things we need. We need to work on job creation in the private sector, and I just showed that despite the language, they vote everything down, and then we have to take uncertainty out of the equation. That was his big point. He's so right. How do you take uncertainty out of the situation? Don't play politics with the debt ceiling. Don't play politics with it. Because I have read economists say it will, if we don't do this right and we don't agree, and the debt ceiling becomes a victim of this partisanship, Treasury bonds of the United States of America will be junk bonds. Will be junk bonds. So you go on the corner and play a game. But don't bring it in here. It's too serious. This is the greatest country there ever was. My parents, one of whom was born outside of this country, told me that I should kiss the ground of America and how proud I am that I am here. But I will tell you, if I see people who are willing to turn United States Treasury bonds into junk bonds, I'm going to do everything I can in my life to make sure those who have done this will not be nameless or faceless. It is too important. The fact that we're even playing these games is ridiculous. The fact that we can't come together and shake hands and say, this budget deficit is terrible, we're going to deal with it, we're going to deal with the debt, we're going to do what we did under Bill Clinton, we're going to balance the budget, we're going to create a surplus. We can do this. You shake hands on it. You have the parameters of the deal. You pass a debt ceiling that's clean. You send a message to the market. I used to be a stockbroker. When the president would sneeze, the market would go down 200 points. That's how the market responds to these things. We don't have to be playing with the stock market, with the full faith and credit of the United States of America. It's pretty simple if everything's on the table. If all you want to do is destroy Social Security and Medicare, it isn't simple. But if you're willing to talk to us, to have a fair taxation system where the Warren Buffetts of the world are at least paying as much in an effective tax rate as a nurse, there's something to talk about here. But don't go walking out of discussions and going home because you didn't get 100% of what you want. Life doesn't work that way. I speak as a mother, a grandmother, a United States Senator from the largest state in the Union when I say this. You don't get everything you want in a negotiation. The Republicans control the House. The Democrats control the Senate. The Democrats control the White House. Correct me if I'm wrong. 2/3 Democratic. In a fair world, we get 2/3 of what we want. But we're going to give up more. It ought to be a 50-50 deal. That's how you negotiate. So this is a tough time. And if the other side thinks that a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution balances the budget, it doesn't. You've got to do the hard work of balancing the budget. You've got to sit down in this tough time, in a tough, fragile economic recovery. Remember, when President Obama took over, we were bleeding 800,000 jobs a month. He had to handle 2 wars unpaid for by George W. and his friends. A tax cut unpaid for to the richest people in America. He had to deal with a banking system that was frozen solid. He had to deal with an automobile industry that was going out of business. And we had to work. And a few brave souls from the other side of the aisle worked with us. Thank God. Or who knows where we'd be today. And now, when we're finally, moving out of this nightmarish economy, not quick enough, we've got Republicans filibustering jobs bills, then coming down here and saying how important jobs are and saying how important it is their certainty when they're playing games with the debt ceiling. I'm an optimist. That's why I stay in this world I'm in. And I thank the people of California for giving me the chance so many times. But there's a saying back home, are you on the level? Are you really on the level when you're in negotiations? Do you really want to have a deal? Do you really want to fix it? Do you really want to work with us? And I just don't know. When I see them filibustering jobs bills, when I see them walking out on the vice president, when I see them saying, oh, that's off the table, and this is off the table, and that's off the table. When they don't run this country, they run the House. I wonder, where are we going? And when I hear people saying, what's the big deal if we don't pay our bills, if we don't lift the debt ceiling and we can't pay our bills? What people have to understand, Mr. President, is lifting up the debt ceiling is not about the future payments, it's about payments due. I said we had a balanced budget under Bill Clinton and a surplus. We went into deficit mode when George Bush took over and did the tax cuts to the wealthiest among us and didn't pay for it, and did a prescription drug benefit and never paid for it, that did 2 wars and never paid for them. And we got into big trouble. And what's the solution of my friends on the other side? We're walking out of the negotiations because we can't talk about taxing billionaires or taking away corporate welfare from oil companies, God forbid. It's just, it makes me wonder who's really on the level. We can do this. We did it before. It's not that hard. We just need people of goodwill. And I would just say to my friends on the other side, forget the re-election of Barack Obama. Forget the next presidential race. You'll have your candidate and we'll have ours. And that's for another day. Right now, we're in this chamber, we're talking about how to have a credible plan to get this deficit down, to get this debt down, to strengthen our economy, to strengthen job creation, to keep the middle class vibrant. I hear some Republicans now on the presidential trail talking about doing away with the minimum wage. Can you imagine, Mr. President? And we go back to the days of the minimum wage was $4 an hour. I remember when it was 50 cents an hour. It dates me a bit. That's what we hear from the other side. Their vision is not a good vision for the young people of this country who are looking forward to a life at least as good as that of their parents. So, in conclusion, this isn't a time to play games or reach for political advantage. This isn't a time to hold the future of this country hostage to some ideological agenda or some pledge that somebody signed to some, political person outside of this chamber, pledges signed. It's not about that. It's about putting America first. It's about putting our families first. It's not about amending the Constitution with a balanced budget amendment. It's about balancing the budget in a fair way. The Republican plan that passed the House, that started with Paul Ryan, it was passed the House, that didn't balance the budget for 40 years. That's not a plan. We got to do better. But when you are willing, as they are, to say to millionaires and billionaires and trillionaires, you don't have to pay your fair share, the revenues just don't come in. And what happens as a result, they have to kill Medicare, which they did in the House budget. They have to hurt education, make the Environmental Protection Agency a shadow of its former self. You know, I go out and look at polls. 80% of the people want the EPA to stay out there and clean up the air and make sure we have safe drinking water. They want food inspections. They want air traffic controllers on the job. They want a next-generation air system. This is the greatest country in the world. We don't have to walk away from our dreams. We just have to have everybody pay their fair share. If that happens, we can do this. And we need to end those wars that are so costly in so many ways. We do those two things, we're on our way to a balanced budget. We're on our way to surpluses. We can do this. And the only thing standing on our way is politics. That's what it seems to me. If people think that more important than fixing this budget crisis is bringing down a president politically, we got a problem. You know, we take the oath of office and we raise our right hand, we put our hand on the Bible to be loyal to this country, to do right by this country. And that's what we should be doing now. And people want to stay in July, August, September, October, through Christmas. That's fine with me. But we got to have a plan that's fair. If we have a plan that's fair, we just balance the budget. We do it over time. We do it wisely. We create jobs. Interest rates remain low. We can do it because we did it before. The only people that ever balanced the budget in the last 40 years have been the Democrats. That's a fact in evidence. So, Mr. President, we have the path lights lighting the way. It's fairness on spending, cut the things that don't work, fairness on taxation, make sure the billionaires pay their fair share. We follow that path. We bring home our troops. We're golden. And I think that's a pathway that I would like to support. Thank you very much, Mr. President. You have the floor.
Mr. President. The senator from Nebraska.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise today to speak in favor of the balanced budget amendment. And let me offer a thought or two as I get started here today. I had the privilege at one point in my political life to serve as governor of a great state, the state of Nebraska. Served in that capacity for 6 years. In that capacity, like virtually every other state, we had a provision in our Constitution, and it wasn't a gimmick at all. It was a very, very serious statement, and it said in a very straightforward way, thou shalt have a balanced budget. And it was as simple and as straightforward as that. Now, the other interesting thing about my state of Nebraska is that in addition to having that constitutional provision, and keep in mind, part of my oath of office as governor was to uphold that Constitution, but part of that was a requirement, a mandate that we could not borrow money. In fact, I think the limitation, if I'm not mistaken, was $50,000 or $100,000. And I would say to people back home when I was governor, I would say that probably was a pretty handsome sum of money more than a century ago when that Constitution was passed. But in effect today, what that meant was that when we got down to the business of balancing our budget as required by the Constitution, I did not have the ability as governor to issue bonded indebtedness, to go out and borrow against the full faith and credit of my state to balance that budget. In fact, I will tell you today, I'm not even certain that the state of Nebraska has a bond rating because it's not necessary. Very simply, we followed a philosophy that we would not spend money that we did not have. And so we didn't issue bonds to build highways if we didn't have the money in the bank and the plan for where the money would come from in the years ahead. If it was a multi-year project, we didn't do it. We didn't build it. Now, many are maybe listening to this and say, well, my goodness, how would that work? Here in this country, we have $14 trillion worth of debt. Where would we be without all that borrowing? Well, let me tell you, in this last economic recession, the unemployment rate of Nebraska never rose over 5%. Today, I will tell you that the unemployment rate in our state is 4.1%. And you know, it never occurred to me that I should ever argue to the people of that great state that if you were successful, you should be punished for that success. Very, very much the opposite. I said, I want you to come to Nebraska. I want you to create your jobs here, and we're going to do everything we can to be your partner in that effort. And the current governor has followed that same philosophy, and we often hear about those governors who are doing a great job, and I'll tell you, I know of one. His name is Dave Heineman. He's the governor of the state of Nebraska. He has balanced his budget. He has not borrowed money, and he has kept the unemployment rate during one of the toughest economic times since the Depression under 5%, and it's 4.1% today. He was my lieutenant governor, Mr. President. But at the national level, we didn't follow that philosophy, and I believe we are now at a crossroads. Because for decade after decade, Washington has promised too much. It has said over and over again, we can be all things to all people, but the real truth of it is it never said how it planned to pay for it. Now the result is that we face a financial crisis unlike any financial crisis that maybe our nation has ever seen. Now, don't believe my words. This is being studied by the hour, by the minute, by the second. A recent Congressional Budget Office report confirms the assertion. Last week, the CBO released its latest economic forecast. It's kind of a report of where we're headed as a nation. And it's grim by even the most liberal economic point of view. Congressional Budget Office now predicts that debt held by the public will exceed 100% of our gross domestic product by 2021 if we just continue the current policies. 12 months ago, when they released this report, it was equally as grim. Well, I shouldn't say equally, because the number I just cited got worse by 10% in just 12 months. Our debt is rising exponentially, exceeding 200% by 2037, and at that point, you might as well just stop making the projections. Just think about this. Our great nation in 25 years, our great nation in just 25 years will have so much debt that the Congressional Budget Office can't compute it. Erskine Bowles has said many times before that this is a crisis that's predictable. He was one of the chairs of the President's own Deficit Commission, and he said this: growing debt also would increase CBO went on to say this: growing debt also would increase the probability of a sudden fiscal crisis, during which investors would lose confidence in the government's ability to manage its budget, and the government would thereby lose its ability to borrow at affordable rates. It is Erskine Bowles who has said this crisis is so predictable. CBO also found that in the next 25 years, federal health spending will increase by 50% as a share of GDP, while Social Security spending will increase by 20%. What's happening? It's predictable. My generation, I'm right in the middle of the baby boomers, is starting to access all of the promises that have been made. It is no longer an option for us to just simply say a little nip and a little tuck here, and we all give a little and it all works out. This is a mountain of debt clearly ahead of us, and we can either do course corrections or, believe me, we will perish. Now, I have no qualms saying that both parties have made mistakes over the years. This is a bipartisan problem. But for some to advocate even more stimulus spending, which we heard in the last couple weeks, repeating the misguided policies of the last 2 years, adding more debt on more debt on more debt, defies logic and common sense. If stimulus spending were the answer, our economy would be firing on all cylinders today. But unfortunately, even with that massive spending plan, that stimulus plan of $1 trillion, when you add the interest, well, it just hasn't yielded the results. Remember the President's promise? We'll keep unemployment under 8%. We just got to bite the bullet and spend all of this money. And here we are today with unemployment almost locked down at 9.1%. Just look at where our country was 2 years ago. In January 2009, the debt was $10.6 trillion. I would argue that was far too much 2 years ago. Today, it's over $14.3 trillion and growing exponentially. We're talking about a 35% increase in our nation's debt in 2 short years. Now, to put these numbers into perspective today, each United States citizen would have to pay $46,000 to pay off our national debt. That's $11,000 more than 2 years ago. And each American family, and I hope you're sitting down when you're listening to this, each American family would need to write a check for $127,000 just to square up the books, just to get the debt paid off. That's not even addressing the spending that is out of control today. Looking at unemployment in January 2009, the unemployment rate was absolutely unacceptable at 7.8%. Today, after almost $1 trillion of stimulus spending, unemployment has grown 17%, with almost 2 million Americans who can't find work, notwithstanding their best efforts. Now, maybe somebody's going to come down here and say, but there's other news you should be looking at. Well, I looked at some other news. Regarding health care costs, contrary to the proponents of the health care overhaul, health insurance premiums for the average family have gone up 19% since 2009. Put it simply, doubling down on deficit spending has failed our economy, it has failed our American people, and in fact, the President's plans have made it worse. So why would we want to repeat the same mistake? I thought raising the $14 trillion debt limit was actually about reducing spending. Why would you be arguing for a stimulus plan in order to raise the limit? Why would you be arguing for larding it up with more stimulus spending? When will we learn that this hole we've dug for this great country requires us to quit digging? There is no doubt that our debt problem is the defining issue of our time, and I see two paths. We can continue to run up trillion-dollar deficits, operate the government with no budget, which has been standard fare for the last 790 days, double down on failed policy objectives that didn't make any sense 2 years ago and haven't improved with time, or we can be frank and candid and honest that we have promised more than our economy can afford to generate. I've heard the arguments, just tax those rich people some more. In fact, I spoke about that soon after I come to the Senate. You know, there was this idea that if you made over $250,000 a year, then you should be taxed more. So I said, okay, if that's going to be the new mantra around here, just to balance the budget for a year, what would the effective tax rate have to be for everybody making over $250,000? Just to balance the budget. I'm not talking about paying off the deficit. Just to do what Nebraska has done for years and years, balance the budget without borrowing money. And I spoke about that on the Senate floor. The rate would have to be 90%, and that was 2 years ago. It's probably worse now. Does that make any sense? Is that the kind of encouragement that our nation was founded upon? That's not a pathway to solvency. That's a pathway to destroying a great nation. Only one path will provide future generations what I grew up with, which was a land of opportunity. In America that my parents believed that if you just worked hard and stayed out of trouble, you could do just about anything. 2 dairy farmers who caused their kids to believe that they could experience greatness in this great country. Well, let's be upfront and honest about the road that we need to travel as a nation. We can get there. Our nation has such a proud history. It has faced so many challenges. It has looked adversity in the eye, and it has forced it down. And each and every time, our great nation has risen to the challenge. So as we reflect and pay homage to the history of this great country in the days ahead, let's use this as an opportunity to work toward a solution to this challenge of our time, our debt crisis. As the CBO report noted, and again I'm quoting, waiting to address the long-term budgetary imbalance and allowing debt to mount in the meantime would make future generations worse off. That's your children and your grandchildren. Although, they go on to say, some current generations could receive a benefit from that delay. So am I to tell my children and grandchildren that so I can benefit from just pushing this down the road, just kicking this can down the road, that my kids and grandkids will pay the price for this? They will have their own wars to fight. I wish they weren't going to, but they will. Their own flu pandemics to deal with, and on and on and on. But you see, I started my adult life with our nation owing $380 billion. In 5 years, our nation will owe $20 trillion. And it won't be canceled at my death. It will be owed by those next generations. My hope is that we can come down here, that we can be honest about the overpromises that have occurred. We can speak candidly about the need to put in place forever a requirement that says to every senator who follows me, as hard as it is, you must balance the budget. And the only way we can do that is by doing what our states have historically done, including my great state, and that is to simply say it in the Constitution. It is not accidental, Mr. President, that this proposal gets so much support in our country, because to the average family, it's what they do every day. And we in Washington must come to grips with this and do the same. Mr. President, thank you. I yield the floor.